Hello ladies, gents, and everyones. It is Thursday, June 17th, and we're here to talk about this week's space and astronomy news. NASA announced last week the first 3 selections under its PRISM call for proposals. And these are new scientific payload suites that will be sent to the surface of the moon as part of the Artemis mission's commercial lunar payload services. The first is the Lunar Vertex, which is headed to Rainier Gamma, which is what is known as a lunar swirl. Now, these are surface features on the moon that we don't actually know very much about, and so that will be one of the things that Lunar Vertex is studying. This is a lander and rover combination that will be studying these lunar swirls as well as the surface magnetic field of the moon. The Far Side Seismic Suite will be headed to the Schrödinger Basin, which is a large impact crater that is on, as the name suggests, the far side of the moon. This suite will carry 2 different seismometers and will be the first time that NASA takes seismic data from the far side of the moon. The Lunar Interior Temperatures and Materials Suite is also headed to the Schrödinger Basin on the far side of the moon. This suite will have 2 instruments that will investigate the heat flow and electrical conductivity of the lunar interior. These payloads are expected to be delivered to the moon around 2024, and 2 of the 3 will represent NASA's first landing on the far side of the moon. This was done by China in 2019 with their Chang'e 4 mission, and NASA has impacted the far side of the moon with an instrument before, but this will be their first landing on the far side of the moon. And heading on over from the moon to Mars, it's been a while since we've talked about the red planet, so let's just go through an update of what is happening over there. So NASA's Perseverance rover completed its commissioning phase on June 1st, which means it was ready to start its first science campaign. So it is currently in the progress of driving south to find a scenic overlook to basically make observations of the Jezero crater. In this first science campaign, Percy is going to be investigating a small area on the crater floor, which is going to be the site where Percy is going to take the first ever samples that are going to be returned to the Earth from Mars. Now, Percy is going to be taking the samples, but to actually get them back to Earth is a future mission, is collaboration between NASA and ESA. The current plan is that NASA is going to create this sample retrieval unit that is going to retrieve the samples and launch them up to Mars orbit. And then the ESA is going to have the Earth return portion, and they are going to have something to rendezvous with the samples in Mars orbit and then return them to Earth. And we're expecting this to be kind of late 2020s, perhaps launching 2026. Along with Perseverance, of course, there's the Ingenuity helicopter. Now, during its 6th flight on Mars on May 22nd, Ingenuity experienced an anomaly. Basically, it started to oscillate quite significantly during the latter portion of its flight. Onboard sensors indicated that it had pitching of greater than 20 degrees, as well as large power consumption spikes and other issues. Luckily, the helicopter still landed safely due to basically very robust design decisions as well as some redundancy in the landing control for the rover. Now remember, because of the light delay, this is all happening autonomously on Mars, and so the JPL team basically got this information back after this had all happened. But luckily the helicopter was okay, and in fact its 7th flight went off without a hitch just last week on June 8th. And while the helicopter is a tech demo and not a science mission, that's not going to stop scientists from getting what data they can. And in fact, they've already discovered some interesting phenomena associated with the dust raised by the Ingenuity flights. Basically, there's more dust being raised by the helicopter than they expected, which suggests that the dust on Mars is more easily transported into the Martian atmosphere. Now, we're so lucky to be living in a time where there is a bounty of rovers on Mars, including China's Zhurong rover, which landed in the end of May. Some images have been sent back from the rover, including a selfie that was taken from a remote wireless camera of both the rover and the lander. These images are great. I absolutely love seeing the tracks of the rover in the base near the lander where it disembarked. It's just like, it really drives home that there is a robot driving around on another planet and it's just leaving, track marks in the dirt there, which I don't know why, but that just really gets me. And these selfies are not the only images of Zhurong. So NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has a very high-resolution color camera on board, and it cut this picture of the landing site where you can see not only the the blackened residue from landing, but you can also see these bluish-green dots that are actually the lander and the rover. This image was taken on June 6th and shows that the rover has actually traveled 22 meters away from the lander, so they're not having any troubles, it seems, in driving the rover around on Mars. Now, China's own Martian orbiter, Tianwen-1, which is also what brought the lander and rover to Mars in the first place, also captured some images of the landing site. Now, this camera is a little bit lower resolution and it's in black and white, but you can still clearly see the landing site and even the 2 tiny white specks here that are the lander and the rover. Speaking of CNSA, they launched their Shenzhou-12 capsule yesterday. Now this was China's first crewed launch since 2016. It launched 3 astronauts to their new Tiangong space station, and they will be living on board for 3 months, which will set a new record for China's longest space mission by quite a lot. The Long March 2F launch was successful, and about 7 hours after launch, the capsule successfully docked with the Tianhe core module of the Tiangong. The astronauts' mission on board is basically to prepare the station for operation because the space station itself is still not complete. The Tianhe core module was just sent up there in April, and so they're basically bringing it into service and bringing everything online in preparation for this station to operate for the next several years. Some bad news related to one of everybody's favorite space telescopes. Well, just me? No. Okay, come on. Everybody loves the Hubble. But yes, the Hubble Space Telescope went down on Sunday following an error on the payload computer. Now, the onboard science instruments automatically went into safe mode when this happened in order to protect them while the team is basically working out what happened. Now, the Hubble operations team thinks a degrading memory module in the payload computer is to blame. So as of yesterday, they were working to switch out that memory module with a backup memory module. If that switch is successful, they will then have to bring the computer back online and let it run for a day in order to make sure that it's operating correctly before they go ahead and bring the rest of the telescope, including the science instruments, back online. Now, this sort of delay is really frustrating for scientists who compete very heavily to get precious time on board the Hubble Space Telescope. And this is just yet another reminder that the Hubble is operating well beyond its planned service lifetime. It was last serviced in 2009. There are no more space shuttle missions to service the Hubble telescope, and we were hoping to have its successor, the James Webb Space Telescope, in space by now, but that's been delayed by years, and it is currently planned to be launched this November. So we love the Hubble, but it is not going to be around forever, and this is just another example of how things can go wrong. Lastly, let's talk about Betelgeuse. This one. So Betelgeuse is a very recognizable star. It is one of the shoulders of the Orion constellation, and not only is it very bright, one of the 10 brightest stars in the sky, it's also very distinctly colored in this reddish-orangish color. And this is because Betelgeuse is a red supergiant star. Now, this is the last stage in the stellar evolution of Betelgeuse before it goes supernova, and so astronomers think it's going to go supernova relatively soon, astronomically speaking, which means sometime in the next 1,000 centuries or so. Betelgeuse is also what's called a periodic star, which means that its brightness changes regularly over time, and astronomers have known about this for decades. Betelgeuse has a cycle a little bit longer than a year in which it dims and brightens regularly. However, last year there was an irregular dimming in Betelgeuse that's been called the Great Dimming. And this dimming was separate from that regularly expected periodic dimming. So some people took this as a sign that perhaps that imminent supernova of Betelgeuse was really imminent, not just astronomically speaking, but even on human terms. Now this would be really exciting because when Betelgeuse goes supernova, it's going to be spectacular. It is going to be bright enough to be seen during the day for weeks after it happens. It is going to absolutely dominate the night sky. It's just going to be totally amazing. I certainly hope that I'm alive to see it when it happens. And astronomers don't really know. So this great dimming was seen as perhaps a sign that something was happening with Betelgeuse that was going to be leading into the supernova. Alas, astrophysicists have solved the mystery, and it does not appear to be related to any sort of supernova event happening soon. So stars typically undergo convection. So this is basically how blobs of material kind of cycle through the star's layers as they get heated and cooled, and then they rise and fall. In addition, stars also experience mass loss. Even our own sun is experiencing mass loss with the solar wind, but it's pretty insignificant. However, for more massive stars, and especially more massive late-stage stars like Betelgeuse, this mass loss is very significant. It's shedding and ejecting a lot of material into the space around it. So using a combination of detailed surface observations of Betelgeuse in addition to computer modelists, a team of researchers published a paper in Nature this week explaining what they think is actually happening with Betelgeuse. Basically, there was a convective cell that was unusually cool that rose to the surface of Betelgeuse, which caused its surface temperature to dip significantly. And this dip in temperature meant the area around Betelgeuse was not quite as hot, which means all of that gas that Betelgeuse has been blowing off prior to this event quickly condensed down into dust. And dust is much more opaque than gas, and so this basically blocked light from Betelgeuse, and it made it appear much dimmer to us, leading to this great dimming event. And so, unfortunately, it was not related to a supernova because I think we'd all love to see Betelgeuse go supernova, not only just because it would be amazing to see, but it would also be absolutely wonderful for scientists to better understand supernova if they could see one happening, this close by. But even though it is not the exciting supernova that perhaps some of us were hoping for, this is still really cool science, and it's pretty amazing that they are able to figure this out. Betelgeuse is one of the very few stars that scientists can actually resolve as anything other than a point. They can actually see Betelgeuse as a disk because it's so close and it's just so dang big. So pretty cool science and news for Betelgeuse, but we'll just have to keep an eye out over the next 1,000 centuries for when that supernova is going to happen. Well, that's all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope, of course, that you will join us again next week. As always, if you want to support what I do, please like, subscribe, share, do all the things that us YouTubers love for you to do, and you can find me on other channels as well, so... Alright, have a good one. Bye.